All right, Eileen, I think we can get started. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Well, I want to welcome, thank you so much, Dr. Lynham, and I would like to welcome everyone to the space. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Anticipating that we have people joining from many different time zones. My name is Eileen Wasserman. I'm really glad to reconnect with some of you that I know well and meet some of you for the first time. I am really honored and excited to be introducing this session, and Dr. Abigail Lyman, entitled Multicultural and Critical Perspectives on Adult Development Theories and Implications for JEDI Work. Let me just start by saying a couple of things as I introduce this session. First and foremost, I am here on behalf of our conference sponsor, the Khalil Jamieson Consulting Group. I actually started my career around 30 years old as an associate of the Khalil Jamieson Consulting Group, and was part of growing and helping to grow the work that looked at diversity from a systemic and cultural perspective at a time when we were really still moving out of the affirmative action framework, a US-based framework. And so coming here as convener or supporter is how I really see my role, supporter of the this great group of people convening this conversation, is really very poetic for me, because as an undergraduate, some of you know Yuri Brofenbrenner, and I studied with Yuri Brofenbrenner as an undergraduate, and then came back full circle to human development when I started as a fielding doctoral student in 2008. And so joining in this vibrant conversation really is at the heart of my really lifelong passion, which continues to be my lifelong learning focus around the intersection of our growth and development and expansion as people that are engaging from our multiple frames of reference, multiple identities, and are expanded in relationship with others, similarities and differences. And my dissertation was looking at what are the ways of engaging, what are the discursive practices that help elevate us and expand us in the process of transformative practices. So being here and learning with you in this realm is just very, very exciting. And so as I said at the outset, the title of this session is Multicultural and Critical Perspectives on Adult Development Theory, Implications for JEDI Work. And this session seeks to bring forth the power and potential of theories of adult development for social change and social justice work, while decentering weird, Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic frameworks and approaches. Put another way, as we are all working to decolonize, diversify, recontextualize, and complexify stage theory, including integrating it with wisdom traditions and cultural knowledge traditions. This session will focus on a mixture of stories, engaging dialogue, somatic and reflective practices, and mutual learning. And so I want to just start by introducing our panel, our esteemed panel. And Dr. Abigail Lynham, is faculty for Fielding Graduate University in Human and Organizational Development. She is also a coach and faculty with Pacific Integral's Generating Transformative Change program in North America, Europe, and Ethiopia. And I'll briefly introduce the other panel members and then turn it back over to you, Dr. Lynham, or as we will connectedly refer to you as Abigail. Joa is really, I'm reconnecting with here, and had the honor of knowing as you were on your doctoral journey, and so great to see you, I don't know, eight years later. And Joa is, Norenha is an executive coach, a life coach, a leadership development program designer, author, and a current student in Fielding's researching metaphorical and phenomenological coaching, and is joining us from Zimbabwe. Welcome. Akasha Saunders is joining us from Grenada in the Caribbean. And I too am so happy to reconnect with you. Akasha is a coach and associate with Cultivating Leadership and teaches at St. George's University, is an alum of Fielding's PhD program in human and organizational development, Dr. Akasha. And then we have Spring Chen, who is a founder of Resonance Path Institute. She has a PhD in molecular biology and is a practitioner of acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine, and currently lives in the Seattle area, though has been doing quite a lot of work in China. Welcome, Spring. And finally, Sushant Saresa is a venture capital investor and a founding partner at Conscious Full Spectrum Finance Institute, and has degrees in finance, management, and integral psychology, and is passionate about scaling transformative technologies. He is also coming in from Seattle area, but is from Nepal originally. And I want to take just a moment to welcome you all, as well as the other discussants who are all of you in the Zoom room, as I turn it over to Abigail. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eileen. It's really lovely to be welcomed by you. And just welcome again to everybody that's here. One thing you may not yet know about this session is that you are all equally panel members and conveners, because we're actually going to be in a co-created learning space together. So actually, I want to invite those that are able to turn on your cameras, because we'll be doing quite a bit of experiential learning, and it's nice to have the visuals if we can. And we'll be inviting all of us into some reflection together, some exercises. There'll be some stories shared, and if at any point you're not able to participate in a breakout or something that we're inviting, feel free to send a direct chat to Akasha or I, and we'll probably to me, and I'll accommodate that in our configurations. But really, we want to invite you into a experiential learning together. And one of the things I'm so excited about this session is it's actually, it's putting me on my own developmental edges, in the sense of how can we actually take the beauty and the power of some of these frameworks, but also bracket them and say, how are they and how are they not meeting our own lived experiences of development, both individually, then also collectively in terms of our own cultural lineages and some of the ways that we're being shaped socially by some of the issues that we're orienting towards today as well, pertaining to justice, equity, and so forth. So this is really as much of a space of learning, it's also a space of unlearning, and then also bringing our somatic experience of these territories really to the forefront. So I'm going to now turn it over to Spring, who's going to guide us in a practice. But really, I just want to express a really warm welcome and an invitation to join us with on your own developmental edges, to the extent that you're able to say yes to that invitation. Thank you, Spring.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Irene. Welcome, everyone. Next, we're going to start with a somatic exercise to feel the development process in our body first, because that's we all go through a developmental process in our somatic vehicle before we grow into our self-awareness and our cognitive function and even higher conscious capacities. So first, I want to invite us to come back to our root and feel that in our body. So with those of you who can, I invite you to stand up in our space. Sitting is fine too, but standing might be more fuller experience. Can you hear me well from this? Great. All right. So let's just give our body a gentle shake and deep breath. And shake and feel like as if your body weight is gently like falling down nicely on the bottom of your feet. And keep breathing. And feel free to move in your body in a way that feels comfortable to you. My facilitation is just a gentle guidance for you to connect with your own body. Let's gently rock our body weight on the bottom of our feet, kind of like a tree, like rocking in the wind. And following the metaphor of tree, let's imagine that we have these roots extending down through our feet into the earth. Just like trees connecting with other trees through their root system, we all have ancestral roots that connect all of the human family to the same origin. Let's feel our common roots underneath our feet, honoring that. And I invite you to move your awareness all the way from your feet, your ankle. Now become aware of our legs and our spine. And just have a gratitude of we are among the few species on the earth that we can have a vertical, erect spine. That makes us an alignment on this vertical axis between our coccyx and the top of our head. Yeah, I see some of you spontaneously start to like move the shoulder. So let's just gently move the shoulder and let the shoulder relax so that we can feel more of the vertical alignment of our spine. And next, I would like to invite you to become aware of the wide open space on top of your head, kind of like the trees have branches and leaves extending all the way up to feel the sunshine, to feel the solar energy. And in our human consciousness, the higher realm connects us to a shared purpose, to a shared destiny. Now, as we align our body in between the upper and the lower realm, I would like to invite you to gently open your eyes and do Qigong exercise movement with me together. From this place of rootedness, let's become aware of our fingertips and point it down to the bottom of your feet and feeling that a sense of connection with that place of root that you just felt. Yes, our shared origin. And from there, gradually straighten your knees, straighten your back, and open your arms, kind of like trees open their branches and gently grow upwards to reach as high as possible to the highest potential that you can imagine or beyond your imagination to reach the energy source. And from there, feel there's a descending energy that comes down. You can guide the descending of the energy with your fingertips, with your hand, and help that energy to enter into your body. To feel the freshness, to feel the healing, the integration this energy brings. Allow it to wash your inside, to wash your organs. Let it flow downwards through your legs and back, and send it back all the way through your feet, back to the earth, back to that origin point, to regenerate that shared origin. And then once you feel that connection, gently come back to the neutral point, neutral position. So we just had a cycle embodying the life growth that goes both upwards and downwards. I'm going to invite you to do one more time, just at your own pace, to feel first the connection with the root, the origin point, and invite from that origin point the energy that's beyond your individual self, that's sourcing from Mother Earth, that helps you to grow upwards all the way to reach the energy source, the infinite source. And from there, invite the energy to come down into your body, facilitated by your hand, all through your core, your pelvis, your leg, and help it to go back to its origin point. Thanks for being a channel aligning us between our shared origin and our shared destiny. And from this place, I would like you to check in with yourself. This pure essence that you carry, your individual, this essence that's unique to you as an individual, where do you feel that in your body today, at this moment? It could be at the tip of your toe. It could be around your pelvis. It could be around your heart. Just put your hand to the place you feel this pure essence that you are bringing. That's unique to you today. And listen to it. And just observe what image, what words comes from this place. Thank you. I honor your essence.
Thank you so much, Spring. That was lovely, honorable, and I feel a bit taller, which matters to someone who is 5'5". I feel like I've stretched a bit and grown at least a foot. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. If you joined us while Spring was leading us through that amazing centering, you are at the Multicultural and Critical Perspectives on Adult Development Theory, Implications of JEDI work session. If this is not where you want to be, please stay. You can no longer leave. And we're happy to have you join us. I'm Akasha. As Eileen mentioned, I attended Fielding, graduated, I think 5 years ago. It feels like such a long time, partly due to COVID, I think. It's not as long as I'm hoping or thinking that it is, but also enjoyed my experience here. It's good to see some friends that I met while studying at Fielding and some after, and some new faces as well. Hello, Eliza. So Abigail mentioned earlier, our exploration together is going to be a little bit of like being at in some ways, the intersection of adult development theory, critical perspectives, and JEDI. Like, where do these important disciplines and practices meet, interact, and support each other and our being in the world? And that's really what we're up to, really. Our being in the world, and not just from a conceptual thing as you've already experienced with Spring, but in an embodied way. And we're going to actually keep that theme going. How do we experience our own growth and development, and even our social location, the ones that matter most to us, or race or age, gender, sexual orientation, country of origin, whatever cultural identity that matters to us? How do we experience our growth and development through those lenses as well? And how do they inform the type of critical look that we bring to both appreciating the potential benefits of these theories, as well as noting the potential limitations of them? We're not going to talk a lot about theory, to be honest. If there's some questions, we'll do our best to address them. Abigail mentioned we're really intended for this to be quite experiential, dialogic, and for us to be in it with you. So we're going to share some things. Sorry for my nasal thing. I blame it on Abigail's country in Seattle. I was there last week on Whidbey Island. Beautiful place, but it's not as warm as Grenada, I promise you. And so I went out riding in the cold, and here's the result. So apologies for the sound. And I will go there again, just to be clear. It is a lovely place. So we're going to actually engage in some storytelling. The five of us initially will share a little bit about what was our meeting with this theory, with adult development, our early meeting, and how did we experience that meeting, and perhaps how have we integrated some of the learnings, the benefits of adult development into our own sort of location and way of being in the world, including the work that we do in the world. So each of us will maybe talk a little bit about that, not to say, oh, this is how important we are, but really to describe how adult development, how complexity, how multiculturalism has informed our being in the world. And then we're also going to invite you to reflect on some of your own stories, and we'll share a little bit more about some instructions or protocols around that as we go along. So you're going to be in this with us and talking with us and with each other as well. So I'm going to kick us off here with a quick story before I got started in some ways, and then you'll hear from Abby and the rest of us. One of the most salient experiences for me around how adult development met me, a young Afro-Caribbean, handsome Fielding graduate or student at the time, actually. Everything else I said was true. I wasn't a graduate at the time. And it happened, I was engaging with a colleague of mine, and we were hosting these men's retreats. I grew up in Jamaica, also in the Caribbean. And I remember when I was doing my undergrad, one of the most significant events that happened for me then was some colleagues of mine being attacked violently because they were being suspected of being homosexuals. And this was a private Christian university, and those things were not allowed, not on the campus, and certainly not in Jamaica openly. And that experience informs some of the type of work that I do around inclusion, diversity, and belonging. And so this friend of mine, we started these men's retreats where we invite gay and straight men together to be in conversations with the hope that there's some transformative experience that might come out as a result. And we were getting ready for our first retreat, rented a private island in Bermuda where I lived for some time. And I was nervous as hell. And not because it was the first time we were doing this. I was really uncomfortable. And the discomfort was mostly coming from, I was the only Black person on our team. My other colleague was a white American. And we had a team of about 12. I was only the only Black person, the only person from the Caribbean. And it just so happens that when we were meeting and I'm sharing things and I'm suggesting things, it's like no one was understanding me. And if my colleague or someone else said the same thing, it's like, oh yes, of course, that's so brilliant. I'm like, but I just said the same thing. Come on. Is it my accent? I speak a certain way, but what is it? And so I was really in the space of questioning my leadership effectiveness and a little bit about how I communicated. But I was putting it all on me was the thing. And I was feeling very uncomfortable about that. And hello, Lenny, good to see you. I reached out. By this time, I'd heard about Susan Broader's work on adult development theory through Fielding. One of the many gifts I got from Fielding, by the way. And I somehow I felt like I needed to be in a developmental conversation around how I was experiencing myself in relationship to my colleagues with this project. So I found her website, found her email, and nervously sent her an email, said, help, please, you don't know me, but would you mind meeting with me? And here's my challenge. And surprisingly, she responded within a day. And we decided to meet, and we actually had our conversation on the eve of this first retreat. And that conversation stood out to me for a number of reasons. One is Susan decided to talk with me. And two, she was explicit about a number of things. One is she was semi-retired and she wasn't coaching, mentoring anyone much these days, was what she said. But if the person is interested enough, she'll think about it, was what she said to me. And then the second thing she said was, I'll admit to you, Akasha, young man, I've never worked with a Black person before. I've never worked with an Afro-Caribbean person before at all. My first experience actually was when I was undergrad and I saw a Black man on campus, a Black student, and I was so shocked. Those of you know Susan, she grew up in Switzerland. And so, very white country. And did I just say that? You know what I mean, I hope. So she was very clear with me about her own potential biases and some of her limitations, which actually made a significant difference. And as I continued to engage with her, we did decide to talk, work together, which really transformed my life in a lot of ways that we don't have time to touch on in this conversation. But the main thing for me was my direct exposure with adult development through someone who has contributed to the field for decades. You'll find their work, ego development theory, anywhere you search for adult development theory, and how that's contributed to how we make meaning of ourselves as we move through the world. But I never left that conversation or any other conversation feeling like my Blackness, my Afro-Caribbeanness, my youngness was dismissed. What she did was help me put on a different set of lens to look at myself and my own meaning making, not by minimizing or dismissing any of those other dimensions of who I am. And that has impacted how I show up with others in this work as others explore their own sense making and being in the world. So that's a bit of my story and a bit of me. Turning it over to you, Abigail.
Thanks so much, Akasha. I'm going to join and share another story, which I'm going to do a fairly brief version of it. I'll do my best. So going back in my own life and work, maybe about 20 years now, I taught in what was kind of framed as a transformative environmental and community studies program. So we were living and learning on the land and in various communities, mostly about environmental issues and change efforts. And I noticed while I was doing this work that some students that I was working with seemed to be able to embrace some of the values of the programs, seemed to have this wider sense of identity, care, and responsibility. That's a sort of shorthand frame for how I think about adult development. And others less so. They were more focused on themselves, or less, more focused on themselves, more authored by social constructs of society, less able to, apparently less able to deepen or root in these values that the program was cultivating. So it was a dilemma for me as an educator. I struggled to understand what was going on there. And somewhere along the way, somebody introduced to me one of these frameworks in ego development specifically. And all of a sudden, massive light bulbs went off, and I thought, aha, I found the tool to grow people to where I want them to be. So I thought it was the tool that would help me, grow and transform people more quickly. The amazing, humble journey that I've been on with these frameworks is to recognize that paradoxically, while yes, they can support tremendous growth and development, paradoxically, I've actually realized that it shed a light on my own inclination to want to grow people. And ultimately what it supported is a way to meet people where they are, for a deeper sense of honoring and respect of people just as they are, knowing that, yes, we need some of these, I think, widening circles of identity and care, a sense of maturing around what we care for and who we're able to include in our circles of care. And yet at the same time, to push or pressure another to grow often backfires in ways that actually functionally can do harm. So the deep gift for me is realizing that if I can actually meet others, meet myself just right where I am with some love and respect and care, that actually seems to open up the possibilities for growth in ways that are, I find, to be deeply wondrous in a way, somewhat mysterious, and a deeper honoring of the person and the journey that they're on. And the last thing I'll say here, just briefly, is, again, I wanted to bring this session together partly because this is right. I'm right in my own learning edges around understanding how these frameworks liberate, but also they can really they can be a disservice if they are an overlay on the deep knowledge that's already won in our bodies in terms of how we navigate a developmental journey, but also our own wisdom traditions, cultural traditions, and other aspects of human knowing around this developmental experience. So part of my learning is to actually decenter these frameworks and to discover where we can meet them in a fuller sense of our own lived experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Abigail. I feel like I can see you a bit more now through your story. We're going to hear from Spring, Sushant, and Joao in a couple of minutes here. And they will take about 5 to 7 minutes to enter in as well through their stories. But before you hear from them, I want to give you a couple of minutes to do some reflection on a salient moment in your own growth and development, whether that included adult development theory or not, but your experience of like, something is shifting in me here. I'm at a threshold moment or going through a significant transformation. Make some notes about that experience. Note things that felt challenging about it, and perhaps what helped you navigate it. A combination of internal resources and external guides like teachers and other supports. So what's that moment? What's a moment for you in your growth that was quite salient, transformative, a threshold moment? Ooh, I love that, Kathleen. Co-liberate and not just collaborate. Thanks for sharing that. So the rest of the time, from time to time, we'll ask you to make some notes. So if you don't have your writing instrument, your laptop, computer, or notepad and journals, take a minute to grab one. Now, because we'll do this a few more times before we end. Spring, tell us a bit about your story.
Thanks. So I was practicing acupuncture and Chinese medicine about a decade ago, and I was dissatisfied in that I'm a native Chinese, and as a Chinese living in America, I feel there's a deep pool of wisdom and philosophy and the worldview behind acupuncture and Chinese medicine that has been that's utterly invisible in this culture. In fact, in the ancient Chinese culture, we say that the people are trained in politics, or those advisors for kings. They are actually trained with the same material as acupuncture and medicine. So basically, this idea that our social system is an organic being, is a complex system, has been in our culture for thousands of years. So I was really resolved to bring that philosophy, that technology, that system thinking of transformation into the light. And that's when I encountered adult development. And I shared very similar journey as Abigail. At the beginning, I was very much taken by the clarity that this theory has delineated a process of expanding awareness. But soon after that, I start to see that mainly the theory has been describing the process of how the cognitive mind is growing and expanding. And yet I look at my own journey, and also the wisdom behind the Taoist way of system change. A lot of the resource we pull is actually, I'd say in the Eastern Asian culture, the transformation is mostly grounded in the somatic and in our heart-based intelligence, whereas the intellectual and the cognitive more is like a holding, more like a, I'd say, if I want to say it more dramatically, it's more like a servant serving in the room, versus in our current social technology, it's the other way around. It's our cognitive intellectual is like the main boss, and the heart and the body is more of a servant dancing around. So it's a big aha moment, like, my gosh, this is my passion. I want to turn it around. I want our heart and the body at the center, and our mind to relax. Boy, I mean, aren't our mind are very exhausted? Too much to do, and it really would enjoy a new role to serve and be a secretary for a while. And that really prompt me to rethink about adult development. And I realized the wisdom that I was talking about was largely missing from the way that it has been articulated right now. So that has actually prompted me to make my own framework. And I want to say one thing at the end of my story is that, in a lot of the way that the current adult development theory held, it's only when we reach the end, like higher stage or more like postmodern stage, that we come back to our body and our heart, which I don't think that's necessarily true. In my work right now, I work a lot in China with native Chinese people, I've encountered vast majority of people I work with, if you type them through the adult development scheme, they won't pass very high. They probably achiever is the highest that they can type to with this scheme. And yet their heart, their emotion, their embodied intelligence is so there, so ready to transform. There's so much potential to discover. So a theory is a wonderful thing. It's a lens. It helps us to highlight certain things that we can focus our energy in. So I want to end my story to say this question: what glasses, what filter we want to put on? Where do we want to see potentials in for human development?
Thank you so much, Spring. And in some ways, recentering the heart, in how we think about growth and how we support others' growth, which some of us could even extend to the way that we see and facilitate JEDI work, an opportunity to also do that similar sort of shifting into how do we come from our heart space and not just our cognitive way of knowing, and how do we incorporate other ways of knowing into how we grow and support others. Sushant, share a bit about your story with us, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Akasha. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to be here. Good to see all the lovely faces. Briefly, a little bit stepping back a little bit, it's been really great to hear some of the stories that's already been talked about, and I really loved Spring's sharing. And one of the tenets of yogic psychology is that whatever you give attention to, that's what grows, right? Attention is energy. And I think it's really important to recognize what we are putting our attention towards, and because that's what we're growing. To me, this really takes me back to the 90s. Growing up in 90s in Kathmandu was really exciting. There was a change in the air. Internet was coming online. Everybody was talking about artificial intelligence. I was very fascinated by the Western world. I was in my teens and I started learning programming and always dreamed of living in the United States, Silicon Valley, and which all came true. But the thing that really sort of was really exciting to me in the 90s growing up was Kathmandu was a place, there was a really multicultural place. There's all kinds of Western influence there. We had our own deep roots that went back thousands of years, especially coming from the Newar clan. Our family's history really went back to a couple of thousand years. And so I was integrating a lot already there. And the fascinating thing about the culture of Kathmandu is that the culture there have already integrated many different ways of being in the world. It's a deeply tantric, Buddhist tantric culture, integrated with Hinduism culture, integrated with the original form of Theravada Buddhism, which was the original teachings of Gautama Buddha. There are many facets of the culture that was already quite complex there. And so I always came from a place of, okay, how do we integrate different things already? So when I moved to the United States, I went on to study finance and management and went into consulting. But the thing that really was alive for me is I didn't want it to be a Nepali person living in America. I wanted to be a Nepali American. I wanted to integrate my Nepaliness with Americanness. And what does that mean, really? And that took me about 10 years journey into adult development, integral psychology, shamanic work. At one time, I lived in ashram in India to really integrate all of these things. And I think there's a lot there that we get to see when we are embodied in a different culture, different ways of knowing in the world. And one particular story I'd like to share is I did my grad school in integral psychology at John F. Kennedy University. And obviously, those of you who know integral theory well, you know this developmental theory is a big part of it. But I was taking my classes from an ashram in India through Skype. That was one of the amazing things that they allowed us to do. And so here I was living in an ashram in India, waking up 4 o'clock in the morning, doing a couple of hours of yoga, meditation, and learning about yogic psychology. I was on a path to become a teacher, acharya as they call it in the tradition. And in the afternoon, I was also basically studying my grad school work. And sometimes late at night, I would basically join in through Skype and attend the class. And I remember the couple of classes that I took was integral research and A and B and applied integral. So how does integral psychology get applied into the world? So that made a profound impact on how I understand the theory, because there I was learning about all this whole another level of another way of understanding cosmology that did not really recognize many of the adult development theory aspect of things. And adult development theory did not really understand the cultural setting that I was in, what I was learning. And then I was also fascinated by the whole shamanic culture. And it feels like there's 3 or 4 different cultures that really did not speak to each other. And I got very, very confused. And I was just trying to find myself like, okay, all of these resonate with me, but all of them do not speak to each other. They don't see each other. And so I came back from the ashram back to California, where I was living at that time, Silicon Valley. And then I got a scholarship in my grad school to go to Peru with an organization called Integral Without Borders. And it was that profoundly changed my trajectory of how I look at this adult development theory. I was there for a few weeks. And after our sessions was done, we're basically doing ground research on integral theory, applied integral theory. And I can speak about that at some other time. There's a lot there. But I stayed back to spend some time with the shamans there, the Andean shamans. And during my time with the shamans, I got this experience of, it all does fit in, but in a very different way. It all fits in me, and it feels in my body. That's what Spring has been talking about. That's what Akash has been talking about, is that, it fits in our body. It's not just a mental understanding. It's a somatic resonance that it feels in me, that I am of shamanic culture, that I am of Nepali culture, that I am of American heritage. All of that came together to me in Cusco, Peru, of all places. So I found my Nepaliness and Americanness in Cusco, Peru, which I never expected. And so when I came back, it took me a few years to really integrate all of that. And then I joined Pacific Integral for the program, GTC program. And that was really an unfolding place. That was like an incubator where I can really experiment with my newfound sort of integration of different lineages. And that has been an ongoing journey. And I have found, basically what I found, I'll close with this, is that's so exciting place to be in, to find your roots and wings. And it's almost like your flight plan, so to speak. Like, it's not just roots and wings, you know where to fly to. And application of that in JEDI work, in how you relate to climate change, how you relate to personal relationships. I bring this even to my personal relationship, where this is a transformative container. It changes everything. Yeah, and it's an ongoing, it's a lifetime of embodiment, but it does change everything. And I think it really starts with a map basically being embodied at a somatic level, so that you are the self as instrument, you are walking the territory. And the map changes. And that's the exciting thing about this, is the map changes as you walk the territory. And one of the exciting thing about what is happening in the adult development theory discussion, or what needs to happen more, is it's not just, theory changing our practice on the ground. It's the realities of the ground, changing the theory as well. It's an interpenetrative relationship that we can have with adult development theory, and that's very exciting space to be.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Sushant. Just going to transition to you, my friend, to João, because we are. I'm doing my best, Abigail, to pay attention to the time here as well. So turning it over to you, João.
Thank you. I'll be brief. So don't be afraid to be politically incorrect, but please put in the chat what my race is. Just venture into that. Please don't be shy. I can show my skin, can show my face. So white, Latinx, human. Okay, what else? Okay, the story is very simple. I was born in Mozambique, and before independence, I was white. Because white was the people who named white was the high class in Mozambique. After independence, I became sometimes Monye. Monye is the pejorative name that people refer to Indians, particular merchants. In the States, I became BIPOC. So what I've decided to do, and Akasha was part of an intense moment where I declared that I had no race. What I decided to do from all those experiences is to explore the deeper feeling of myself. Instead of looking to constructs, instead of looking to labels. And that was such a liberating experience from that moment, because what I've realized is that even very important liberatory concepts like white fragility and so many that are still being used today can also be self-punitive and can be a prison in itself instead of being a liberation. So what I started to do is from that moment is to pay attention to my body, to pay attention to whatever is going on inside that gives me hints of what is right and what is wrong, instead of the constructs and the language we use. And yeah, so maybe that's the experience I would like to share today.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's I just want to invite all of us as we're listening to everybody's stories, and we'll start to also make room for and include some of your stories, as well as just the the ways the stories touch us in our bodies, and also what they evoke in terms of like what are the gifts that we can carry forward from our own lived experience that help us navigate these challenging issues that we're living in around justice, equity, diversity. And João, I loved what I heard in your story, which is really paying attention to how the constructions and the social constructions can really actually do harm if it's an overlay, and also it's telling us who we are versus our own lived and felt experience in the body. So we're going to continue this inquiry, and we want to pause for a moment and just say, invite you all to reflect on what are you hearing, what's standing out, what's being evoked in your own experience, and we're just going to take 5 minutes for this. So by way of supporting that, invite you to either put in the chat what you're hearing, what you're learning, what it's opening up in you. And also we can hear from one or two folks as well. So if you'd like to share your reflections or if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take a couple people's, kind of live sharings, but just invite us all to be in our reflection and share that either in the chat or verbally. So inviting in a couple folks to reflect on what these stories and lessons learned are evoking. identity as liberation.
Mm.
Is anybody drawn to be willing to step into the space and put your hand up? And again, it can be in the form of a reflection, a question, something about your own experience that you're holding or reflecting on. Diane?
Well, I think that what struck me, and what has struck me since I started back at Fielding almost a year ago, 2 terms ago, is this is one of my tribes, and the idea that I could hear these stories and this passion around aspects of human development and how it has informed us and our journeys, and how it draws us into an appreciative and a liberatory sort of passion in the world and for other human beings, and for reimagining, as Spring said, the body and the heart's intelligence, and bringing that to the forefront of the experiences of our humanness. I just find breathtaking, and I feel this deep sigh of relief to be home.
Mm.
So thank you.
Beautiful expression. Thank you. Cynthia?
So tell me, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you well.
Good. I'm really resonating with a lot of the sharing that people have, the things that people have shared. And I'm Indian and born in India and raised in the States. And that whole dynamic of reconciling between what the world sees you as, whatever that is, it's kind of unknown until they say something or treat you in a certain way. You don't realize, oh, that's how they see me, versus how your family sees you in our tiny little enclave versus how you feel inside. And I really appreciated what Spring said about the servant relationship that the mind typically plays, the role that it typically plays in relation to the body in other disciplines, other cultures. And here that's kind of flipped around. And so the mental takes center stage over, and just learning to feel all those dynamics, learning to pay attention to how it feels inside, how that makes you feel. Some people, they seem okay, but they don't make you feel okay. And then other people, and then when do you learn and when do you not learn? That whole struggle. It's just been really helpful to hear everybody talking about it in this way. And I'm excited to see where you're taking this conversation. I just wanted to share, I'm really resonating with that dynamic.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Cynthia. And I can echo it. What Spring shared around that really resonated with me as well. I love the image of the mind as secretary in service to the body and the heart. So I'm going to just invite if any of the other panel members want to comment, just a minute or so. Anybody drawn?
Well, I just quickly say one of the things, Cynthia, that touched me from what you shared too is our reactions, responses to being labeled. So those of us who belong to some sort of marginalized group, what I often found is when we've taken any sort of assessment, like developmental assessment especially, there's a kind of labeling that happens. And so when what I've been experiencing with folks from marginalized group, this sort of aversion, even though they want to be supported in their development, this aversion towards, don't tell me this is where I'm at. So that sort of historic labeling of saying, oh, this is how I see you. Even sometimes we even personalize the assessments themselves, even though they're not meant to, but our history of being labeled and categorized can show up in the way that we engage with developmental assessments, which is an important consideration for those of us who administer these assessments to people from historically marginalized groups, to be in relationships with them as opposed to being assessors of who they are, how they see the world.
Thank you, Akasha. It's you can feel the kind of, the deepening conversation here and the complexity that's being brought in. So a deeper nuance around how we recognize some of the gifts and then also the limitations of how we hold some of these frameworks and some of the constructs that we're working with. And we can hold the concepts and constructs of JEDI similarly. So to recognize, again, the ways that we're letting them kind of define us versus us being in relationship to this lived phenomena, both of what we're experiencing and then what we're learning together collectively. So we're going to pause again for a little bit more reflection on your own developmental threshold. So for anybody that's joined more recently, we're engaging in we're sort of weaving through our time together, returning to reflect on a significant developmental experience in your own life. So we're going to take a few minutes for a little bit more reflection, and there's going to be layers of this as we go through our time together, and then there'll be some sharing towards the end in small groups. So returning to this significant developmental threshold that you have experienced in your life, there's a couple questions that we want to invite you to explore. One is, what helped you to navigate this developmental challenge, whether those were internal resources and or external support in the form of a teacher or a tradition or a lineage of some kind, or internal resources, our own wisdom of the body, of the heart, of the mind. So what helped you to navigate that developmental challenge? And then there's a second question I'm going to bring in a couple minutes. And then the second question, and you can stay on the first if you're not complete, I've written it in the chat, is how did your own social locations shape your developmental experience? So we can think about the ways we've been shaped by culture, by our various forms of identities, race, gender, political ideology, sexual orientation, religion, and so forth. Family of origin. So how did your own social locations shape how you experienced and or interpreted and navigated this developmental threshold? Take a few moments to finish up your reflections. And I'm going to now invite you, Joao, to guide us in a practice.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, everyone, for making time and space, and this is a priority for you. So first of all, I would like to help you to let go everything that we have spoken so far. And you can do some movement to shake it up. You can open your mics and make some sound, like whatever feels right. Yes, beautiful. Just shake everything that you have conceptualized, thought about, and just create some space. Okay. So what I would like to suggest is that if it's okay, you can close your eyes. If you want to have it open, it's also fine. Just close a bit in order to have a wide gaze. And just try to find a place in your body that knows something about self-development, about adult development, about development in general. And you can also see if when you say the word or you hear the word development, if any image comes to your mind. So it could be either a felt sense in your body or an image or both. And for me, something in my belly and in my chest is starting to form. And it's like a bubble. Which is part me and part much wider. It's pulsating also. And the edges are also dissolving somehow. Like if there's something behind and something inside that are trying to connect. And trying is not a good word. Yeah, there's something, some connection. Anyone else?
I can share that I similarly feel this almost like a cauldron of fire in my belly. Feels like a lava, a pool of lava that is, boiling and roiling, but in a slow, gentle way, and has a life of its own. That there's actually nothing to do, nothing to make happen, but actually it has its own beautiful energetic movement that's a rising and then a releasing back into the cauldron.
Yeah, for me, it's in my lungs and heart above the diaphragm, and like a billowing, blowing on the flames, and but really rhythmic and dancing and melodic with the strong beat from the heart, but yet it's not the heart and lungs.
I want to just check, Joao, you're there? Okay.
Anyone else would like to share from a somatic and emotional realm? How does adult development look like?
I'll share. I put it in the chat, but I see this, and I'll read what I wrote in the chat, but this is what I see, this dynamic array of developmental potentials. They're future versions of ourselves, and they're on the threshold of emergence, and they're waiting patiently for some fortunate culmination of, I don't know what, inner insights, somatic wisdom to burst forth and manifest.
Beautiful, thank you. Can have space for one or two more if you would like to share.
I would like to share. I would like to offer a metaphor of the Tai Chi symbol, which also I think is kind of like a energetic blueprint of our Earth itself, which has two poles, the North and South pole. And also for human consciousness, there's the ground of our being, of who we are already versus what we can be, the purpose. And I see the human development is this vast territory as the diversity that held that between these two poles. Yeah, so anywhere on, it's kind of like anywhere on Earth, there's a wonderful ecosystem and beauty and life and vitality. I see our development is a journey of experience and appreciation of the beauty and the vitality and the diversity of wherever we are, and how we are connected to the whole at wherever we are.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you, Sergey, for such a beautiful image. To you, Abigail.
We so it's so rich to hear some of the sort of felt sense experiences and metaphors that are coming forward. I actually see that Dr. Claudine has raised your hand. Did you want to share your experience as well?
Yes, it's Kizart, Claudine Kizart. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Tidewater Community College, and just really happy to be in this space. As we were going through this exercise, I feel gratitude, a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to slow down our thinking, because it's in that space that we grow, and understanding that we live in a world that, you know, where sometimes the focus is striving to get to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. It is the opposite of what supports us in our growth. So I'm very appreciative for this opportunity to slow down intentionally and have some intentional dialogue, so that we may make the intentional changes and improvements in our world and in our educational system that we so need and desire.
Thank you so much, Claudine. It's yeah, it's really it's so important, and I resonate with what you're sharing as well, fully.
Yeah, sometimes every time I do a session, I always start off with some type of meditation. And sometimes I feel weird, right? Because you're in a room with a bunch of academics and you're asking them to close their eyes, and, you know, and mountain pose, and, you know, put their palms forward. And so this is the first time that I've ever been part of another academic space where we are doing something like that. So I feel grateful, but I also feel like affirmed. You know, I am not crazy for saying, hey, let's slow our thinking down in this space before we dig into microaggressions or biases. So I'm also feeling very, very appreciative for the validation that this is a much needed exercise to slow our thinking down, and that meditative space is welcomed and has a place in academia.
Thank you for affirming that.
Can I add something?
Please.
When I started doing this kind of works with metaphors in the coaching space, people always asked, but you can't put an executive doing that. And I said, why not? It's not only in academia, it's also in the corporate world. Because we always talk in metaphors. When we say we are in a crossroads, we are talking about a metaphor. There's a main metaphor, life is a journey, and we are in a crossroads. So in that moment, there's nothing as easy to say, okay, imagine that you are really in a crossroads. Feel it in your body. What would you do now? So each one of 6 words, according to George Lakoff and also Johnson, one in each 6 words is a metaphor. So there's a lot of space that is created since we are babies. Before, we didn't have language at that time. We just had sensorial and affective language. And that place, that imaginal space, it's still there. It's always prompt to work for us. So it's nothing as easy as when people use their own metaphors or their own felt sense to really help them go into that space. And what they have discovered, it's amazing. Sometimes people struggle with the decision for months and years, and the body knows the answer. The image knows the answer. It's right there.
Beautiful, Joao. And Dr. Kizart, we're actually going to build. Oh, I just see Lenny. Let's take Lenny, and then I'll say what I was about to say. Go ahead, Lenny, please. You're on mute.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, Akasha. I met Akasha a while ago and loved him and really wanted to be working with him, and one thing or another made it impossible to happen. This was at Fielding. But what I wanted to say was, I have been in as a white woman who's been involved in the civil rights movement since I left college, back in the Punic Wars, honestly. And this has been, listening to this has been one of the most loving, heartfelt, expansive discussions I have been in. I have been in stuff that's been pretty rough, and that's not in the 60s, but in the past 10 years, and had some really rough stuff happen to me as a white woman. And listening to this has been so healing for me. So I just wanted to let people know, Abigail, you, and also Akasha, and Joao, anyway, all of you. It's been, thank you very much.
That's quite meaningful to hear, Lenny. Thank you. And it's actually even a more perfect segue into what we want to invite you into next, which is really the implications for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work and belonging work. So the ways that you've heard Spring, Joao, Sushant, Abigail, and myself invited us to recenter the heart, recenter the imaginal space, focus on the embodied experience, even as we have to also do things, like what are the implications for how we foster more justice in the world, more equity, more diversity, more inclusion, more belonging in the world. Some of you have put some things in the chat already, like, oh God, if I were to bring some of these things to my boardroom, they would kick me out, or these sort of things would happen. So we really wanted to dive into some of these explorations around if we were really to bring these sort of critical and perhaps even more embodied experience and ways of exploring this work, what might be some of the implications? We're going to put you in groups of 3 for 15 minutes and just talk with each other, see what comes up. And then when we come back, we'll harvest some of that and see what we'll learn from each other. Okay.
And can I add to that also to weave in some threads from your own story that you've been taking notes on? There might be some direct implications. So to combine those two, and I'll open the rooms.
Perfect. We see that, Reed. Thanks for being here, my friend. And Sergei, he left. Okay. Welcome back, Astrid.
Thank you.
Very good. Welcome back, everybody. And we don't mind if you keep your cameras on for the rest of our time together. And we are so curious about some of what you talked about, particularly some patterns of things you may have noticed in your conversations around the implications for fostering more justice, equity, inclusion, diversity, and belonging. What stood out for you? Feel free to share some of your experience as well.
What stood out to me in our group was personal experience. The importance of having that lived experience and that lived experience that then shifts our perspective, but then needing that additional support in learning what to do with that shift in perspective, like how to apply that.
Yeah.
And everyone in our group shared a personal story that supported, that caused that shift in perspective. And then that understanding that even though that shift in perspective was happening, and we needed support, whether it be through education or through mentors or something to support us in knowing what to now do with that, so that we would be part of the solutions of in that space of equity and justice and inclusion.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dr. Kizar, getting us started, and for also just centering again that we're also individuals together in this space and in this work, right? So how do we allow for more space for us to bring ourselves more, and for inviting others to bring themselves more? Who else would like to share a thing? Eileen, please.
Yeah, I was struck by and shared about the heart space and the full embodied space, and that you all created, because we often talk about the intellectual theories, and those are very important frameworks. But the heart space does something different performatively. So much of this JEDI work, as you talked about JEDI work, is people wondering about, as a white person, and I notice white people and many others are looking at, am I doing it right? As if there's a right or wrong, and tell me the rule book and tell me the rules. And then what happens is we get into stuck in our heads, and also self-protective, which is a hardened heart place. And so much of what we know as lifelong learners is it's hard to learn when our hearts are hardened. And so I'm just really appreciating the open heart welcoming of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And could I respond briefly to Eileen, to what you shared? I love what you spoke to, and I one of the practices that I think has been really present here, actually, in the naming of polarities, is whenever there's a contraction in ourselves and our system, where there's a hardening of the heart or a sense of fear or panic,